It's time for another episode of Shocktober. Today we're going to talk about a movie that I have been wanting to see for a while and kind of just never got around to, and then finally made its way onto Netflix. And that is a movie called The Witch, or The VVitch, however you want to read the title, because for some reason they spell it with two V's. I'm sure there's a reason for that goes over my head. It's probably some business about, the way they talk in Old English times. But The Witch is, the plot synopsis goes, a family in 1630s New England is torn apart by the forces of witchcraft, black magic, and possession. It is directed and written by Robert Eggers. It stars Anna Taylor-Johnson, I think her last name is. I don't know why Anna Taylor-Joy. I don't know why IMDb always cuts off parts of their names. She was also in the movie Split, which maybe that's a movie I should cover on here one day, because I have some thoughts about that. Also, Ralph Ineson, Kate Dickie, who both I found out recently were in Star Wars The Last Jedi for little bits. So The Witch. This movie is, I will say, a masterclass in filmmaking. Because as far as the story goes, it's not like a incredibly exciting movie. This movie is the definition of the slow burn. It's like the performance. So this movie got a lot of attention for the writing, because it is written and spoken very much as exactly how people spoke in the 1600s, and a lot of people bounced off of it for that reason, which I think, is kind of dumb, because honestly, you don't even really need to pay attention that much to the dialogue, because you'll get everything that they're trying to say, as the movies plays out. You just pay attention to what's going on, and it's oh, there's a witch, there's paranoia, and you can tell who's pointing fingers at who and things like that. The main thing I'll say about this movie is it wastes zero time trying to fuck you up, so to speak. Right away in the beginning is the first thing is, a baby gets kidnapped, and then you see it get mushed up and spread on some old witch's body. And they're not fucking around. Yo, in this movie, there's going to be some messed up shit, and there's going to be a witch. They don't beat around the bush. I'm not going to talk spoilers, because I do believe it is a movie that you have to experience. And I will just say, again, it's the things about the movie is the filmmaking. It's haunting how just this movie builds up the whole time. Even scenes where you kind of know what's going on, there's still the build up. This is just a movie that I kind of don't really know how to talk about. I really enjoyed it. It's on Netflix. I highly recommend watching it. It's not a movie that I think is terribly scary, although I will say there is a scene early on in the movie that kind of haunted me for a couple days. I'll also say the music is very sparse, but when it's used, it's very effective. The scene in particular that kind of stuck with me was just the scene of this old witch woman laying on the ground, just kind of writhing in darkness, covered in the blood of the baby, and just lit by candlelight. And that is one thing that is, so everything about this movie was as natural as can be. There was no lighting on the movie, and during the day they used natural sunlight. During the night scenes, they only used candlelight and lanterns and stuff like that. So, they kept on top of keeping the movie historically accurate. They filmed it almost historically accurate. I mean, obviously they didn't have film cameras back then, but it was, not using a lighting team, and the movie still looks great. There are many haunting images in the movie. And it's one that'll stick with you visually, and the audio might be things that you'll remember. The performances are all really great, but to me they're none of the things that are going to kind of be the things you remember about the movie. There's definitely a couple scenes and moments of just shock. I almost said shock humor, just like shock value. And again, there are things I don't want to spoil because there's not like a ton of things that happen in this movie. A big thing is just paranoia and a big religious aspect, because it's the 1600s and they're just like this hardcore religious family who are deciding to go live off on their own because they think everyone else isn't religious enough. And, you know, it's all about like, oh, you know, are you doing your prayers and stuff? And like the first thing happening to this family is like their small baby being ripped away from them by a witch, and like a scene that's really great. So like the one kind of thing I will spoil, which this is in the trailer, is the oldest daughter, Thomason, is playing peekaboo with her baby. And, you know, she's covering her eyes and then like boo to the baby. And it's all done with the camera from the baby's perspective. So you see her doing this, and then she just does it multiple times. And all of a sudden her face just goes rigid and the camera cuts and you see the baby is no longer there. And then it kind of pans up and you see something just barely going into the woods and stuff like that. And it's moments like that that make this movie just spectacular. It's not very long, but it can feel a little long just because the way they shot the movie and everything, which to me is kind of its in its benefit. It's a very well crafted, like you feel like a movie like this, just every second that's on frame are completely planned out and articulated to be exactly as the director wanted. And the effort in a movie like this really shows. It's not a movie you should watch for the story. It's a movie for movie lovers. If you're looking for your slashed out blood and gore horror movie, there's a little bit of that in here, but this is not the movie you should be watching. This is for more the movie of people who just want to feel uncomfortable, and the movie completely accomplishes that. This isn't going to be a long one because I don't have a lot to say about the movie, because you should really just check it out for yourself. It's on Netflix. Check out The Witch. That's going to be it for today's episode of Shocktober. Be sure to check back tomorrow for our next horror film.